Dr. Joyce Ashuntantang is a poet, actress, creative writer, and associate professor of English at the University of Hartford. She has appeared as a guest speaker in many countries around the world, including England, Germany, Nicaragua, Greece, Costa Rica, Colombia, Nigeria, Morocco, Cameroon, and of course the USA. Sweden is mysteriously missing from this, and I hope you will correct that in the near future, and if I can help you with that. She is a dynamic presenter, believe me, she is. Will you dance for us and sing? No? She is, I have seen and heard that. She is amazing. Who draws from her personal experience, interdisciplinary education, and extensive encounter with many cultures to make an impact on diverse audiences around the world. A graduate of 3 continents, I love that. Dr. Ashuntantang received a BA in English with a minor in theater arts from the University of Yaoundé. I think I got that right, in Cameroon. A master's in library and information science from the University, this one I'm going to have trouble with. Aberystwyth, is my Welsh okay? In the UK, an MA and PhD in English/African literature from the City University of New York. She is the author of many scholarly and creative publications. Her poems, which have been translated into Spanish, Greek, Hebrew, and Turkish, have also been anthologized in major international volumes. So we clearly have an authority on intercultural relations. And one of the great things about Joyce's presentation a couple of years ago was that she touches on issues that many people don't realize they ought to touch on if they try to do business across boundaries. I taught a course about this myself and learned a whole lot in the process. So it's not only about economics, it's about understanding the people, the traditions, the history of the place that you are going to venture into, because otherwise you're going to be deemed a foreign ignoramus, imperialist, and be shunned before you even get your foot across the threshold. So I am delighted that Dr. Ashuntantang is able to be with us this morning, and I'm going to hand the microphone over to her. I don't know if this is the one that you will be using.
Hi.
My name's J.C. McCauley.
I'm Naisha McCauley, and you're watching AccessTV.org.
Okay. So, thank you, USAADO, for inviting me here. It's really a pleasure to be part of this. I was part of the conference in 2015, and it's wonderful to be back. And yes, I have been part of many border crossings. And I believe that whether it is to do business or to go to another country to present a poem, a keynote address, the things that you have to be conscious about are basically the same. And so it is with that knowledge that I can bring to bear some of the things that I believe would facilitate that border crossing. I am an associate professor of English, and so I'm going to bring that knowledge to bear on my talk this morning. One of the courses that I have to teach, of course, is English composition. And one of the things that we stress a lot for freshmen come is understanding the writing situation. What is the writing situation? You're supposed to know your purpose. Why are you writing the piece? Are you trying to inform, explain, evaluate, persuade, entertain? What is your purpose? You also have to understand your audience. Whom are you writing to? Are you writing to old people, young? Are they educated? Are they uneducated? Where are these people located? Are they in a city? Are they in a village? You have to understand your audience in order to compose your writing in such a way that it suits that audience. The third thing that you have to consider in a writing situation is the tone. What is going to be your tone? And what is tone? Tone in writing is the author's unstated attitude. The author doesn't come out to say, I'm angry. But we can tell that they're angry from the language, from their choice of words. And so, I'm going to appropriate those three things into this: cultural issues in cross-border business relationships. Those three pillars: audience, purpose, tone. We'll start with purpose. Why are you going into that place in the first place? Why are you going there? Of course, within our context, you're going there for business. You're going there for commercial reasons. You're going there to make a profit. That's why you're going there. The next thing is, so who is your audience? And this is when we face that giant geographical mass called Africa. And in the words of, or the way Sanders would say it, that continent is huge. Really huge. If you come from Somaliland or Puntland or South Sudan, you would say it is made up of 57 countries. 57 countries. And that is the first thing that you have to know about where you're trying to go to. So I guess an audience like this one must have heard it several times that Africa is not a country, it's a continent. Okay, so 57 countries. Now, when we want to look at the ethnic texture, it is also equally extremely diverse. We are talking over 2,000 ethnic languages. Yesterday, you heard that Nigeria has about 250 something. I can tell you that Cameroon, where I come from, has 230 something. So between Cameroon and Nigeria, we're talking 500 and something languages. So what that means is that you have to be able to differentiate the countries. Which particular country or countries are you going into? It is very important to know the countries. You can't be in Ghana and make a mistake that you're in Cameroon. You can be in Cameroon and forget and think you're in Ivory Coast. They are very, very distinct. And so, because you're dealing with such a diverse place, you're dealing with such a huge a continent, as you know, the Africa in the global imaginary has been skewed by the media. So the first thing is to eliminate preconceived negative attitudes. We've talked about one of them already. It's a continent, not a country. You also want to go in as a peer, not a superior partner. Maybe that's one of the things that China has a foothold, because they don't come in as superiors, they come in as more as partners. And maybe the West, because of colonialism and all that, they come with a chip on the shoulder. But that's something to think about. And then, where Africa is concerned, I would want to say that while knowing the particular country is important, I think you should also come in with an idea of regions more, because regions are very important, even within a country. For example, if let's say you're coming into Cameroon and you're going to the north to do business, the north is very different from the west. Your preparations to go to the north and your preparations to go to the west would be like going to two separate countries. Northern Cameroon is for the most part Muslim. And the cultural values that would define them would be markedly different from what is happening in the West. So understand the region very well. Another misconception that you would have to deal with is that based on what the TV has shown, there's a tendency to think that there's a lot of poverty. Yes, there is poverty, but people in African countries have a lot of money to spend on what they desire. Okay? It's amazing how you leave the United States, you go to visit in an African country. Let's say I go to Cameroon, and I go to sit on a table like you're sitting like that, and we are out having a drink. I'm the only one with one phone. The rest of them have like three or four phones for every network that exists. Okay, they will tell me that, oh, it's because sometimes they're not sure of the network. So you have somebody who may have Verizon, T-Mobile, AT&T, and each one has a phone. And you'll be like, wait, I thought these people were broke. so that's one thing that you have to remember. There's money for what they desire. Another preconception that you may have to eliminate from your mind is that because these people are supposedly poor, they may want cheap things. Yes, cheap things do sell, but even poor people enjoy quality and durability. So that's where you could make a difference. The Chinese goods may be there, but that doesn't mean that if you bring something more durable, they would not take it. They would not look into it. And so moving from this preconceived notions, we go into aspects that cut across many African countries. Yes, we have independent countries that have their specific orientations, but we have certain things that you can say these are values that cut across. Age is still revered in many parts of Africa. So if you go in, you're young, you're dynamic, you have knowledge, be very careful how you speak to your partners over there who are older. You don't challenge them in public. Talk to them one-on-one. If you're coming in a team, make sure that your team members know about this. Another thing is getting to know local belief systems. Like I said, they say Cameroon is Africa in miniature. So you meet all kinds of belief systems. So even if you're not in the north, and let's say you're in Yaoundé, your host may be Muslim. So you have to be careful about eating pork, you know. And belief systems may have to do with even greeting. From some parts of Cameroon, you don't talk, some leaders, some traditional leaders, you don't greet them with a handshake. You know, things like that. These are things you research before you go there. Belief systems are very important. That doesn't mean that you subscribe to the belief system, but you respect your partner, you respect the environment by honoring their belief system. Yesterday, I asked a question to one of the speakers, and I said, do women have any barriers doing business on the continent. And he said he hasn't experienced any. And I was going up to follow up and said, that's because you are a man. That's why you haven't noticed it. But there are definitely certain gender dynamics that come into play. Okay. And just as age is revered, gender is still, women are still not appreciated 100% as men. So that has to be, you have to keep that in mind. When we talk about dress code for women, it's not just in Muslim countries that you may be expected to cover your head or cover your legs. In Cameroon, there's certain government buildings that women cannot get in with pants. The National Assembly, you can't get in with pants, you must wear a dress. And the dress has to be really long. It's very interesting that you can wear a nice business suit and you can't get in, and a guy is dressed in jeans and he gets in. So many government buildings, women are not allowed in. You can imagine a businesswoman coming from the US has to be so aware of that because she may actually travel without packing any dresses. So it's something that is very, something that women in particular have to understand. What are the gender dynamics? Some women, in certain settings, women are still not allowed to take the lead in talking, in presenting, in taking the lead. And so, in as much as that is not supposed to be condoned, it's also wise to understand what are the gender dynamics in that region where you are. So once you have done this, one of the main things now to look to is what I call tone. And as we said, tone is the unstated attitude. So this is the way you carry yourself that would show that you are respectful of the environment and you want to get a lot out of it. And I would frame that by saying that go in to create a relationship, not to carry out a transaction. Go in to carry out a relationship, not to just carry out a transaction. And how do you do that? The first thing is that you must have a local partner there. You must have a local partner, and that partner becomes your conduit of knowledge. That partner becomes the person that would help you to get some of this information that we are talking about. The next thing is when you get there, you must create time to stay. My people say that you don't go to a place as if you went to throw dirt. You see, it's when you're going to throw dirt that you hurry because of the stench. You go in and you come out. You want to create time. You don't want to fly in just to do the transaction and fly out. Why don't you want to do that? Because you need to spend some time there to build the networks, to understand the environment. If you have a partner who has been doing some groundwork for you, when you come, that partner may want to present you to the key people. That partner may want to take you for sightseeing so that you get to know the environment that you'll be working with. Your interest in that environment also facilitates the way your business grows in that environment. I talked about respecting belief systems. Let's say there's a traditional ruler in that place. Your partner, your business partner may think it's important to see that traditional ruler. And you may be wondering, what has that got to do with this business? It's very important. You may go there, he decides to give you a title. The title means a friend of this place. That may become your leverage to do business there. That may become your leverage to be treated as one of them. And so those things are very, very important. You know, getting to have a partner there, creating time so that you don't just fly in and fly out. Another thing that gives you, creates a respectable tenor of that visit is centered around language. Nelson Mandela said, if you talk to a man in a language he understands, that goes to his head. If you talk to him in his language, that goes to his heart. If you talk to a man in a language he understands, that goes to his head. If you talk to him in his language, that goes to his heart. It's very important to know a few phrases of the local language of the area. And again, this is when your research has to be good. Know the region where you're going. Don't learn a local language of another region. You know, it's in the same country, but you just, oh, there's nothing like Cameroonian or Nigerian language. There are many, you know, or African. So you've learned Swahili, you know a few words, Jambo, and you go to Cameroon and you're like, Jambo, nobody knows Swahili there. So, but it's very important when you know a few words in that local language, it opens up doors. And if you, again, I use Cameroon because Cameroon gives, it's a very good example because, like I said, we call it Africa in miniature. Cameroon is a bilingual country. It's, the official languages are French and English. So let's say although it's French and English, it's presented outside as French because the French are in the majority. And so you brushed up on your French, ready to go do business in Cameroon, but your business is in Boya, which is in the English-speaking section of the country. And so you come there very excited, and you want to speak a few sentences in French. Nobody will be impressed. In fact, French is the language of the oppressor because they're the majority. In fact, yesterday, the English-speaking section declared independence. So we may be having the 58th country. So language is important. It can make, it can also break if you get it wrong. Tied alongside language is getting to know how to pronounce the names to the best of your ability. What I always tell my students, as you can tell, I have a very long last name, 12 letters. I always tell when it's like Ashun, Ashing, I'm like, why are you having difficulties? It's the English alphabet. If you learned your ABCs, just take it syllable by syllable. And you don't want to know what I tell the telemarketers. Ashun, Ashang, Ashang, you can't call it, you can't sell it. You know, so, and that is, you should take your time, learn how to pronounce the names. I'm always very fascinated how people find African names difficult, but then they can pronounce Polish names with no vowel. You know why they can pronounce that and don't pronounce the African names? Imperial barriers. This one comes from the words McCauley is easier than Ashuntantang when there's a repetition. So again, It is you make the effort. And yesterday, I can't remember his name, the speaker who talked about doing business in Africa.
Mr. Hazelwood.
Hazelwood, yes, Hazelwood. He talked about being adequately capitalized for hidden costs. I would put that on the understanding the business environment. You know, yesterday he talked about the fact that you need money for some things that it looks like a gray area. It's not like you're giving bribe. It's not like you're doing anything corrupt. But there are little things that may facilitate your stay. You may have to put gas in somebody's car so that they could run an errand quicker. You know, the communication system is not as effective in all the countries. So the driver that you are using may become your courier. That's the person that takes a letter from one person to another. And to make him a happy camper, you may give him money for lunch. You know, you may give him money for the family. So little things like that that you don't plan, you know. I think they do that here, right? You take your business partners to lunch, people that you expect something from them, you dine them, you wine them, you know, things like that, and understand your environment. In Cameroon, when you're traveling, there's so many checkpoints along the road. So many checkpoints. And some of them are heavily militarized. If you want to fight for your rights, you can spend the whole day there. Okay. And if you don't want to be part of the corruption, you may not wait to be asked, because if you are asked, they are not supposed to ask and you give, you may be doing some, so you may even offer before they ask. So you're just being nice. So there are lots of little things that, like he said, so be adequately prepared for this hidden costs. There's also another factor that you have to recognize the presence of the government in that country and the rules that that government has in place. A lot of foreigners come in with this impression that Africa has failed states, so rules don't work anyway. That's not true. The rules work. And the rules work when they want them to work. So they can invoke a rule that they have not used for 10 years, but they invoke it on you. So you have to be very conscious that you are in a sovereign nation and you need to toe the line. You need to understand their rules. You need to respect their rules. If they present them to you, the fact that they have not been observing those rules in the past doesn't mean that if they invoke them, you're not supposed to comply. One of the ones that they do on the highway, and I think if you come from any African country here, you're used to that, is when they're trying to get money from you, they'll ask everything up to first aid box. Because they know that many people may not have that. And if you know that, it's like, oh, but all these people don't have it. Yes, they don't have it, but there's a rule that you're supposed to have one. Okay, so they are correct about that. It's true that they don't enforce that, and they may just be doing that to get some money from you, but that is a rule that is in place. So I think with that said, I would conclude this by saying that when you are crossing the border from one country to another, you have to remember that you're entering into another space. But if you're entering with respect, when your purpose is to create a long-term relationship, if your purpose is to create a space that you would return many times over. If your purpose is to be able to get something shared between you and that place, then you have to make an effort, a conscious effort to understand that environment, a conscious effort to give of yourself to that place, not just going to grab, but also to share some of you that place. And wherever you plan to share some of you, you go there in love, whatever that word means to you. Thank you.
Hello. Wonderful, thought-provoking stuff, as I knew we were going to get. I'm going to hand this around because it probably will be easier from especially the further reaches of the room if you had a microphone, if you have a question or comment for Dr. Ashuntantang. Did I get that right?
Yes.
4 syllables, I think. Oh, hello, Mr. Highsmith. We have a young entrepreneur here. Hi there. Are there any questions or comments? It's rich stuff. For me, it's exciting to hear. I have been there before, not literally in Cameroon, but in terms of hearing these things and recognizing the validity of it.
Good morning. Thank you for that great presentation. I'm Dr. Twackley. I'm a physician in orthopedics.
Okay.
So my question is about your gender comment. So being from Ghana and Nigeria, I'm living in America, I'm always curious what strategies, practical and maybe formal, that you've sort of used that have worked in terms of trying to either bridge those gaps or at least circumvent around them when you're working in Africa.
I believe that the first thing is research. I went to Morocco in Fez, and we were at a hotel, and that hotel had a nightclub downstairs, and I found it very exciting that it was downstairs. That means after the conference, I could go to my room, lounge around, and in the middle of the night, I could just wake up and just rush downstairs and have fun and come back upstairs. I did that the first night. By the second night, the hotel receptionist stopped me and told me that that attitude is unbecoming. And you see, the way I was presenting myself was not being respectful of me. You see, the way I was just changing and coming down and going up, I was not different like a woman of the night. Okay, so that meant I had not done my homework. I thought that the hotel was protecting me. I thought they knew that we were from the US and we were different. So if I had known that, I would have made sure that I had company, male company, and I think there were plenty that would not have minded to guide me downstairs and bring me up. So I think research is important. But the other part that you talk about, that from my own experience, is that I know this is going to sound controversial, but it's the truth. When you go like in a group, you're going to present an idea, let's say to the minister or to a traditional ruler or somebody with hierarchy. You could be the most intelligent of that group as a woman, but in my particular culture, I have learned that I would have to allow a guy to take the lead, in presenting. I'll piggyback on it, based on the way I piggyback on my presentation, chances are the next time I may be asked to explain more. So it's not coming from, you're not trying to like dominate. It ticks some men off, especially if you're discussing something that is controversial and something that you're not supposed to be loud about. But in another circumstances, the gender card plays in our favor. They send the woman. There are times when it is the lady that is sent to go talk because they believe that you have a softer hue, and so you're able to negotiate better. So I believe that it is understanding the environment, understanding when to play it up. You're not denying yourself, you're not denying yourself, but you have to be very conscious of when you're supposed to project, when you're not supposed to project, and I think it's something that the team, you would know. It's the same thing. It's almost like knowing your team players. Who has this ability? Who has that ability? It's the same thing. Okay? And these are things that sometimes we don't, it is not politically correct. Someone like, how dare them? If I want to speak, I'll speak. No, but we know when, when this character is like, you would, slow it down. There are times when even a husband would say that you would make that negotiation. You go talk to that real estate person because they know that with your gender, you can play it better. I don't know, am I making any sense? Okay. Any other question? Was I that good?
You said it yourself, so I didn't have to. You were indeed. Thank you so much, Joyce. Always a privilege to hear you. Frank, Dixon, please come and give a pitch for your wonderful organization. And I get a chance while he is walking up to thank him again for being a co-sponsor of this event and being a partner in our endeavors. Thank you so much, Frank.
Thank you, Harold. Good morning. Good morning. So as we are going into our third day of such an amazing conference where the Black Business Alliance has had a chance to partner with USAADO in bringing together some amazing individuals, professionals, educators, business people, bankers, investors. Myself being the president of Black Business Alliance, and I'm here with one of the co-founders, Howard Hill, back of the room. Howard, thank you again for coming out today. So as I mentioned in the opening session yesterday and in the reception on Thursday, the Black Business Alliance is committed to an inclusive process of growing, sustaining, and the economic development of our Black business community, our Black community in general, where we are looking at getting that community back together to build trust and invest in ourselves. So please feel free to get one of my business cards and one of our flyers and visit our website at bigbusinessalliance.org and just have a frank conversation with me offline on what the Black Business Alliance can do for you and what you and the Black Business Alliance can do for our community as well. So again, enjoy the rest of the activities and speakers for today. I know the great man is about to come up next, has taught me a lot since I've been in Connecticut over the past 8-9 years. It's actually one of the first gentlemen I met when I got here, and we grew up probably about 15-20 miles apart in rural North Carolina. So I'm excited to hear the second part of his conversation as it continues from yesterday, where he told us about his plight in life and his business, and we're going to enjoy the rest of the day. So thank you guys again.
Thank you, Frank. You have actually just introduced our next speaker, so you have taken that pressure almost off my shoulders, but I do have to add my immense admiration for our speaker who is coming up, Mr. Carlton Highsmith, who is retired from business now, so he says. I don't know if you ever do, but having founded and run to great height the SPG Corporation, and now being recognized for his endeavors in many ways, including being the vice chairman of the board of directors at Quinnipiac University, our neighbor slightly to the north. You gave a wonderful presentation yesterday, as you did 2 years ago, and I'm excited to hear the sequel, Mr. Carlton Highsmith.
Can everyone hear me? Yes, sir. I don't think I need the mic. I don't believe I will. I do anyways. Thank you so much for the opportunity to, again, be with you today to share some of my experiences. I talked yesterday about the evolution of my company from when I founded it just a few blocks from here on Elm Street in 1983. Today I want to spend some time talking about some of the key learnings, things that may be nuggets for you as you think about business entrepreneurship. It was probably the end of 2008 when a magazine business publication called and asked if I would write an article. It was the Diversity Business magazine. They wanted me to write an article targeted at Black business owners around the country. What key learnings, what opportunities I had to share with them, some of the things I had taken away from my 30-plus years in business. And I took it really, really seriously, the request to write that article. I was humbled and honored, and so I said, I'm going to really do a good job at this. So let me give you the context on which I went about writing that article. I locked myself in my office for 3 solid days, and I had easels. And I decided to write every year I was in business in one column, from 1983 until 2008. Then I wrote down next to that year significant things that happened in the business that year. Then the next column I wrote down is sort of what were the results, what were the key decisions I had to make in the context of what was going on that year. The next column I wrote down some of the results, things that happened as a result of the decisions that I had to make that year. And then the next column, the final column, I wrote down what were some of the key takeaways, what did I learn from it. And I did that for each of the years I was in business. And when I was done, you can imagine, every wall of my office was covered with these sheets of paper that had captured all of my experiences over my years in business. And then I went around and I tried to circle key phrases, key principles, things that seemed to recur the most. And when I was done, I had all these things highlighted. I'm an old economics major, so I decided to do a little math and said which were the things that were recurring the most. And when I was all done, I had the sheets of paper that had all these key learnings, the number of times they recurred. And I decided on the morning of the third day, now I got to pull all this together. How do I do that? And I'm a big fan of David Letterman. And I used to look forward each week to his top 10 list. So that's what I decided to do. I decided to force rank all the key learnings over those 30 plus years in business and rank them and call them my top 10 key learnings for growing and running a successful minority business. I actually have a copy of the article I will leave with each of you today that was published, and will give those top 10 key learnings. But I wanted to frame my remarks today around those key learnings, to share with you what I wrote and what you'll read later, and talk a little bit more about, give you more context around each of them. And I'll go from 10 to 1, like Letterman did. Number 10, don't forget to maintain a balance in your life between your personal and your business. There's so many great entrepreneurs and business owners I know over the years who implode because they don't recognize the importance of getting away from the business and appreciating family and friends, relationships that you form. That series of years that I wrote down when I did the article, I had things like winning a town championship, coaching a town championship with my daughter's basketball teams. I had Hamlin Hall beats Hopkins in basketball. My girls both played basketball. I had daughter accepted to play soccer at Duke. I had all these things which reminded me, don't forget about the balance between family, friends, and the business, because you become a better business person when you have a balanced life at home with family and friends. So that was my key learning number 10. Number 9 is probably one I took away from my corporate career, and that is have discipline around your financials. Establish what will be your in and close dates, whether it's monthly or weekly or quarterly, and stay disciplined about understanding how you're doing relative to your budgets. Really have discipline around keeping financial records, because you'll find you'll need them, particularly when you're approaching financial institutions for money. So don't shortcut your financials. Do budgets and measure yourself against how you are doing against that budget. This one I talked a lot about yesterday, and this recurred a lot during my recount of my entrepreneurial career, and that is innovation. Innovation can really come from anywhere, any place. You don't have to be a large company to be an innovator. This was a core competency of our company, and I recognized it early on, and we leveraged it. We were really, really good at coming up with great new package designs, package structures. And as a result of our focus on innovation, we got access to the largest consumer products companies in the world, Procter & Gamble, Colgate, Unilever, S.C. Johnson, because they're always looking for innovation. And if you can demonstrate that you can innovate, then guess what? The doors are open for you. So leverage innovation. Find a way to differentiate what you do from the rest of the world. This one was really, I can't impress upon you the importance of the customer. You have to be so laser focused on delivering value to that customer that they don't want to do business with anyone other than you. Delight the customer. I got that phrase from a global product manager at Procter & Gamble. We were sitting in a meeting one day in Cincinnati talking about packaging and some designs that we were presenting. And he said, my ultimate goal is to delight the customer. And so we sort of adopted that. We need to delight all of the people we do business with. We used to have lots of plant visits because our facilities were all over the United States and actually in Canada as well. And people would come to visit us a lot to do plant audits, to do approvals of press approvals. And so we developed what we call world-class customer visits. So if you were coming to visit us at one of our facilities, one of our employees would pick you up at the airport, transport you to your hotel, if that's where you were headed, bring you to our facility if that's where you were coming. We'd make sure that if it were early in the morning, you had breakfast. If it were around noontime, you had lunch. We'd always offer someone to go to dinner with you. We created spaces within our facility where it was very comfortable for people to come and visit us because they would spend hours, sometimes days, doing audits and press approvals. And so we wanted to make sure that the customer experience, which we define as from the time you pick up the phone to call us. Our receptionists weren't called that. They were called directors of first impression because that's who they were. You come to visit us, that's the first person you encounter. So you have to delight that customer from A to Z, provide that customer experience like none other. That was really important to the growth of our business. Opportunities sometimes present themselves and you're caught off guard, and shame on you. You have to be prepared all the time. The story I write about in this particular key learning was the time I went to a business conference in Hartford, Connecticut. I did a lot of homework as to who was going to be at that conference. Hugh Blind, back at the time, huge food, liquor, spirits company. We had wanted to do business with Hugh Blind for years. I knew they were going to be at this conference, so what did I do in preparation for going to meet them for the first time? I did a research on all their products. We actually did prototypes on recommendations that we would make for improving some of their products. So when we met Hugh Blind in Hartford, they were absolutely blown away the fact that we had learned so much about their business, understood what some of their challenges were. And not only that, had come with some innovative ideas and solutions for some of the product categories they had. I didn't get any business from that encounter with Hugh Blind, but I got something much more valuable, and I'll talk more about that later on in the presentation. But this meeting with Hugh Blind, that I had done so much hard work in understanding first who was going to be there from the organization, and what were going to be their interests, what were some of their challenges, and then be prepared to offer some ideas and some solutions. They were absolutely blown away and so impressed that they allowed me access to the director of purchasing, who later gave me a card or reference to someone who would prove to be very instrumental in the growth of our company over his existence. But be ready to seize opportunities. This one I talked a lot about yesterday as well, and I can't overstate the importance of first understanding what are your core competencies, I call them, your core strengths. And core competency would be defined as what attribute about you or your business is unique to you that can't be easily reproduced by somebody else. That's core to how you go to market. So once you define those core competencies, then how do you develop a business framework for leveraging them, for taking advantage of them over your competition? The concept I shared yesterday was something called SMART, Strategic Marketing Responsive Teamwork. It was our process for leveraging our core competencies, which were innovation, total quality management, and world-class continuous improvement, right? Those were our core strengths. And our SMART business model enabled us to take those core competencies and leverage them for competitive advantage. There's so many business guys I've met over the years who are so busy in the weeds, they don't take the time to sit and think strategically about their business. They're so busy putting out fires, they don't sit to understand what does a marketplace look like, what are my competitors doing, and what is it that I'm going to have to do if I'm going to defeat them in the marketplace. Because that's what it's about. It's about winning, right? It's about bringing more value than your competitors can. So you really have to sometimes sit and think strategically about how do you gain a strategic advantage, whatever business space that you're in. How can I differentiate my product, my service from all the other people in the world who do this? This one, now we're getting to the real guts of the matter. The next four are going to be really, really important. I met so many business folks over the years around the country who do a really wonderful job of starting a business and growing it, and then they put it in Coast. They put it in auto drive, and they stop investing in the business. Now, there's nothing wrong with having what I call a lifestyle business, where you grow a business to a particular size. There's you and maybe your wife or cousin or something. There's nothing wrong with that. If you want to run a lifestyle business, that's okay. But if you want to grow a business to some scale and employ hundreds and thousands, then you have to make some choices about how you deploy your resources. You may want to defer on that condo on the Cape. You may want to defer on the Ferrari and invest back in the business. Because if you don't make really strategic choices about where your resources go, you'll find yourself in a position not to take advantage of great opportunities. If I had not deferred on that condo on the Cape, or the sports car, or the large gift to my church, or some other large gift to a university, if I had done that, then in 1998, I would not have been positioned to do the acquisition with Allied Swiss Lanza, which really transformed my company from a small New Haven-based design engineering business to a global packaging company. That acquisition was $24 million. $2 million of it I had to come up my own. So if I had deployed my resources on toys and things, I would never have been positioned to close on that transaction in 1998. So really think about how you spend the fruits that come from your business and when you do it. Because if you don't invest back in the business, you're not going to position it for growth. You just simply are not. This is really important as well. You're going to fail. The first 4 years I was in business, if I had closed the doors any one of those days, any one of the days of those 4 years, no one would have blamed me because it was that difficult. It was that difficult. I thought it was going to be a very easy thing to do, coming from a 9-year corporate career, taking my Rolodex, leveraging my Rolodex with the contacts I had to get projects. But it's amazing how regarded I was as a corporate executive leading packaging development teams. Once I became an entrepreneur, all confidence was lost. No one believed that I had the ability and skills and ability to handle major initiatives. So I had more doors slammed in my face those first 4 years. So you're going to have adversity. I mean, that goes with the territory of trying to be an entrepreneur. But you got to be resilient. You got to pick yourself up. If you believe firmly enough in your vision, then you got to get up, learn from the failure, and move forward. Every no I got, I would sit in my car and say, why did I get that no? I tried to learn something, pick up some nugget. So over time, I developed, probably year 3.5, this closing statement I would make after they said, no, you can't have a project here. No, you can't have an initiative here. I would say, what is the most difficult, most challenging problem you face within this company? Perhaps you'd let me look at that most difficult, most challenging project. And finally, that closing remark landed me an opportunity with Johnson & Johnson. When the lady reached in her bottom drawer and said, you know what, this product we launched a couple of years ago is not doing nearly as well as we thought it should. And perhaps your team could take a look at it. And that was 3.5 years into my business. But I had learned, after being said no to so often, I got to find some way to twist and change this pitch so that I have an opportunity. So expect expect adversity. You're gonna get it as an entrepreneur, business owner, and learn from it. Move forward. This one I cannot emphasize enough as well. Like it or not, your word, your reputation, it follows you wherever you go. Particularly today's world where everything is so global in its impact and reach. People know whether or not you are someone who keeps your word, whether or not you operate with the utmost integrity. And the companies that I work with, the relationships that I develop, they demanded integrity. They demanded trust. You'll be amazed as well when you deal with financial institutions, banks. If anyone's here from a banking institution, you'll know this. When you sign agreements with banks, there's an expectation there that you're going to meet that expectation. You're going to meet that requirement. And when you can't, because not that we always met our obligations, sometimes we had covenants that we knew we were going to violate. We knew we had ratios that were going to be close, but we were always proactive. I'd say, okay, let's go see them. Let's go sit down and talk to them. To say, okay, this is what we see coming. Third quarter of this year, this ratio, this covenant is going to be violated. But this is our plan. We're going to give you a heads up. This is what's going to happen. But these are the things we're going to do to try to mitigate it. Always have to develop a reputation for integrity, keeping your word. If you don't, it is a surefire path toward disaster when you don't do what you say you're going to do. Not just to your customers, to your bankers, but to your employees. I had 600 of them, and I was always transparent, always operated the utmost integrity. Make a promise, you keep it. If you can't, this is what happened, and be very, very open and transparent and communicate. This one, I got a lot of pushback through after I wrote the article, and it's over a decade later, and I stand by it. The number one factor for the success I had as an entrepreneur was because of relationships. Relationships that I formed with people, wonderful people over the years, relationships that resulted as a result of people making a phone call on my behalf, opening a door for me, making a reference for me. Remember I told you about that Hubline experience in Hartford when I met with the director of purchasing at Hubline? They didn't give me business, but what he gave me was a business card. He said, I'm really impressed with your thoughtfulness and your presentation. We don't have an opportunity for you, but I want you to call this guy. That guy was Gary Cronin in New York. Gary had just been hired by Lawson Martin. He was the only employee in the United States by this global packaging company, and his job was to grow their sales in the United States. And so Vince Kakiti, the director of purchasing at Hubline, told me that Gary would probably like to talk to a guy like me because there were probably going to be opportunities to work with Gary and Lawson Martin. And I kept that card for almost a month, and one day I was coming back through New York, and I decided to call Gary, sat with him, and we hit it off right away. Long story short, I did a strategic alliance with Gary's company, Lawson Martin, that led to our having access to some of the largest packaging manufacturers in the world. That relationship led later to my buying one of Lawson Martin's North American division. That took us from a small design engineering business now to a global packaging manufacturing business. So that one relationship that was formed at Hubline in Hartford, Connecticut, led to Gary Cronin, that led to Swiss Lanza, that led to our company becoming a global packaging business. Those are my top 10 key learnings. And I would welcome your questions, your challenges, your pushbacks as to what you thought about them. What do you think they're right, they're relevant? Or do you think I made them up? Yes, Howard.
Can you come on up, please?
Thank you very much. Very, very powerful presentation. Appreciate it. Took down some great notes. Question that I had when we're talking specifically with black business, and you think about the enormous amount of issues that face the community, and can you be very specific and maybe give some very specific details about, one, how to build relationships, promote a trusting relationship, promote trust within the relationship, and then also how to sustain it, and then dealing with having to say, hey, listen, I can't do it. I can't live up to my word. And if you have broken a word, how to repair as well.
Okay, all right. Very good question. Thanks, Howard. I think, first and foremost, I think people sometimes don't properly define what relationships are. Relationships aren't one way. At least the lasting, sustaining ones aren't one way. Relationships are sustaining when there's mutual gain, when both parties have something that they take away from it. I've not known many relationships to last a long time when it's always one way, when it's always, what can you do for me? That doesn't work in my world. The relationships that I am familiar with, the ones that I'm intimate with, are where there's mutual gain, where everybody wins. Gary Cronin, we developed a personal relationship in the beginning, but that relationship grew strong and lasted over 30 years because Gary was charged with growing U.S. packaging sales. So he viewed me as an avenue to get that done. I viewed Gary gave me access to capabilities that I could not muster on my own. So we both won from that. So from my perspective, Howard, it's about mutual gain. I don't think you can force relationships that aren't mutual gain. That's my personal observation over the years. There's got to be something in it for both parties. When it comes to black businesses, the remarks I made yesterday, I'll just digress for a second. The reason I became an entrepreneur was not because I was born one. I became an entrepreneur because I was sitting in a political science class in 1969 debating about power and how do you obtain it, how do you transform a community, how do you make people's lives better. And we were debating how whether Martin King's perspectives were correct, or H. Rap Brown, or Stokely Carmichael. And it was a pretty lively discussion because a lot of guys were like, it's H. Rap Brown, it's Stokely Carmichael. And the professor, Dr. Holden, said, I challenge you guys to think about another way to transform and change your community. Then he held up $1 and he said, how many of you know how much wealth is in a black community out of this $1? What percentage is help? Then he held a dime. And guess what? Today it's about 7 cents. So it's gotten worse since 1969. Really? 7 cents is what's held in the black community for every $1 of wealth held in the United States. So Dr. Gray or Dr. Weldon, he said, look, Rockefeller, DuPont, Ford, Mr. Procter, Mr. Gamble, Mr. Johnson, and Mr. Johnson. He said, look at what they did. They started these small businesses that grew into these multinationals, employing tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, creating wealth. They have foundations. And he said, I challenge you guys to think about entrepreneurship. And that was when the bug got planted here, even though I never thought about it before. So even when I went to work for a corporate job, I never forgot about that lecture from Dr. Holt. And so for me, it's about starting businesses, creating businesses where there's value created. I don't like when there's not a good value proposition for black-owned businesses. I mean, unfortunately, I have to give bad news to black-owned businesses all around the country saying, guys, if you look at who your competition is, if you look at what the marketplace is demanding, if you look at what your skills and capabilities are, you shouldn't be in this business. You have no competitive advantage for being in this business. Rules of competition, capitalism are very, very tough. There are winners and losers, and unless you come with an A game prepared to win, so I think what I see is a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs, particularly minority entrepreneurs, who don't do a good job of understanding what their value proposition is. How is it that I am going to win in this marketplace? So I think that's the harsh reality that I see, Howard. You gotta have a value proposition that says, I am gonna win based upon these core competencies. And that's why I'm so focused on trying to educate and provide skills and have folks understand, these are the sort of precursors to growing a successful business of any sort. Places where my word has been broken. I think it points to a failure, because one of the things I talk about when I do presentations a lot, people don't ask me a lot about my failures, but they ask, what was one of your biggest failures? It was responding to Daimler Chrysler. Daimler Chrysler came to us in 1999 and asked that we build a plant for them to make corrugated boxes for auto parts in Detroit, the north side of Detroit. We said no. They came back a second time and said, we really would like for you to do this, and here's a 5-year contract to do it. And we said no. They came back a third time, because the reason we're saying no, that's not our business. We make pretty boxes that sit on store shelves. We don't make corrugated shippers. And they came back a fourth time with their 5-year contract and International Paper as a mentor for us to say, these guys will show you how to do it. And so our management team said, well, okay, we'll try it. So we allocated $3 million to go do this, and it was the worst decision we could have made. First, we didn't know anything about the space. Our instincts were correct. Number two, IP was not a very ethical partner. They were not an ethical mentor. They already had plants in Detroit. Daimler Chrysler was forcing them, talking about forced relationship, Daimler Chrysler was forcing them to mentor us because Daimler wanted some minority content into their corrugated shippers. And so this was Daimler's solution, right? We'll have Specialized, the largest minority supplier, partner with IP, create this enterprise that would make brown boxes for our auto parts that we ship all over the world. We go, and Daimler is not ethical. Daimler's not wanting us to be successful because Daimler saw that all we were going to do is eat their lunch.
Daimler or IP?
IP, I'm sorry. Okay. IP didn't want us to succeed because we were going to take business away from their plants. They had 4 plants in Detroit. So that was a situation where that was a disaster. Unfortunately for us, we made a decision that, Daimler, we can't do this. Even though I signed that we will be here we can't do this. And so they understood and we backed out. But we put forth the case. Plant we had built had lost money every single month it was open. We had documented evidence of how Daimler was undermining us, how IP was undermining us, how they were giving us really bad, incompetent people as so-called mentors. So that's an example. Here again, a forced relationship, right? Mm-hmm. We didn't know anything about corrugated boxes. We shouldn't have done it. But you're talking Daimler Chrysler, right? Who says no to Daimler Chrysler? I hope that's responsive.
Yeah, thank you. I'd love to follow up with you because there's a lot of follow-up questions that I have based upon what you said, which goes into why DBA is in existence. So thank you very much. You did
Okay,
answer the question.
Push it.
Carl. thank you again for joining us today and sharing your wisdom and insight. One question. As leaders, managers, inspiring entrepreneurs, you tend to have a passion, right? A passion to do something, to achieve something you believe in and your growth. But sometimes that passion can either be the reason you succeed or the reason you fail, because you tend to judge the people you need to join you or follow you or you employ on the same level that you have as far as your passion. So could you share with us on some of the ways that you managed downward in a followership kind of capacity to get people on board with your passion, with your vision of growth, without, discouraging them and just being too overbearing?
Okay, thanks. Very good. Very good. The first 15 years in business is different than the last 20 years in business. The first 15 years in business, it was more about those things that we talked about earlier. Being someone who kept your word, operating with integrity, looking for people who had passion. I mean, I love people with skills, expertise, but if there's no passion there for delighting the customer, for innovating, then I'm not interested. And I get that by just talking with you before you become part of our team over a meal. Just, okay, give me some experiences. Share some stories where, what excites you? What were some of the disappointments? How did you climb out of that adversity? And you get a sense. And then you create an environment where there's complete transparency, openness, you share everything. So that's how I managed the first 15 years. Then when we really became a global packaging company with 600 employees at 11 sites around North America, it required a level of buy-in that I thought I was going to be really important. And I made a strategic decision, and some guys would disagree with this. I would much rather own 80% of a $200 million business than 100% of a $20 million business. That make sense? So what I did as we were growing the business, I decided I needed to have my senior management team on the same page as me, that our interests were aligned. So I made them equity owners. So I carved out 20% of the business, and for my senior management team, they own a portion of the business. And it's amazing how that transforms behavior. You act like an owner. So that's how I got the alignment, Frank, by involving them as equity stakes. Because I would much rather own. If you think about Bill Gates. Bill Gates owned 10% of Microsoft, right? But there was any question, any challenge as to Bill Gates and Microsoft, they were identified, right? So why shouldn't those same rules apply in the minority business ownership space? As a matter of fact, I pushed back really hard on the National Minority Supply Development Council because they have rules about our percentage ownership, if you're a black-owned business to remain certified, that I think are archaic. And I told them that. Because what you do with your ownership requirements, you exclude us from entering the equity markets because we can't dilute below a certain level. Bill Gates, 10% of Microsoft, but clearly he controls Microsoft. Carl Highsmith, I couldn't dilute below a certain level in SPG. If I did, I lose my classification. So I hope that's responsive.
Yeah. Thanks, Carl.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, I always have a question. Thank you.
Sure.
So IP was a bad mentor.
Yes.
Can you talk about good mentors and the importance of valuable role models and mentors in your own life, even in personal life, and then of course the importance of role models and mentors in business?
Okay, awesome. That's an outstanding question. I think from a personal perspective, I have so many incredible teachers that I can point to, from high school on through college, who contributed so much to sort of making me who I became and instilling in me certain values. From my ninth grade English teacher in high school to my high school principal, Dr. Flood. There's so much that I took away from my interactions with them. I mean, it's interesting. I went to all segregated schools in the South because my school district did not desegregate until 1970, and I graduated in '69. So all my teachers were black, all my administrators were black, but they were very, very good. Because if you think about it, if you were a black college graduate in 1965, 1960, you couldn't go work for a large corporation. So you were mostly relegated to being a teacher or a preacher. And so the competition for jobs in the 50s and 60s to teach was fierce. So though they were all black, they were very, very good at what they did. And they were also looking at our generation and seeing how the world was changing and saying, these kids will have opportunities we didn't have. And they were very tough on us. They brought an expectation that we were going to achieve to the classroom. And I benefited from that by having some great high school teachers and high school administrators. And Gary Cronin, professionally, that we met in his office, we became really good friends, and he is probably 20 years older than me. So he had been around the ringers. He was a tremendous mentor for me. He helped me negotiate the complexities of dealing with Lawson Mardon and Ali Swiss Lanza. That was a global business, how to deal with the Swiss, the British. So he was tremendous in giving me some insights, and this is how you do it. I think one final one would be Robert Garapy. Garapy was my chief operating officer, French-Canadian guy, little guy. But he had life experiences that he would bring to me. And though he's a little guy and I'm who I am, we had so much in common. He was orphaned at 5, grew up in the streets of Montreal, fended for himself. I mean, and he just toughed it out. His first job was cleaning toilets at a reform school that he was ultimately at. And the lessons he learned from growing up that hard, tough life. I mean, so we were tremendous colleagues over time. And he still is one of my dearest friends. An odd couple, to say the least. But there are people who enter your life, and you have to recognize what value they could bring to making you better, making you a better person, a better professional, better entrepreneur, and embrace them. Really important. Yes, Manuel.
Beyond publishing these key learning principles in the diversity magazine, have you thought about disseminating it through other media, like in a book and on and on? Yeah, because if you're interested in putting in a book, I can help with that.
I have given some thoughts to that. I give lots of speeches and presentations, and one of my old marketing services manager, communications manager, told me one time, just publish your presentations and speeches. I thought about it a lot. I was even asked about it this summer. I'm vice chair at Quinnipiac University, as you mentioned, and I endowed a chair in innovation and entrepreneurship at Quinnipiac because I feel so strongly that not enough college kids appreciate entrepreneurship as a valid way to really make a difference. And I went with the professor, Dr. Gray. He and I went to Budapest this past summer. And they have a college there in Budapest called Matthias Corvinum Coliseum, MCC. And it's a fascinating model where at this college, MCC, it's located in Budapest. The kids who attend this college aren't enrolled there primarily. They go to other colleges throughout Budapest as lawyers, as engineers, as business majors. but yeah, they stay at MCC. So every day they go to their various university, they come back to MCC, and then they have additional courses in leadership development, in communication skill. It's a fascinating model. So I spent 2.5 weeks there this summer giving lectures on entrepreneurship. It was interesting because they had kids from all over Europe, Russians, and these kids are really fascinated by entrepreneurship. They view entrepreneurship as a way to help transform Eastern Europe. And one of the professors there said as well, he says, let's do a book on your experiences and things that you can share. So, good idea. I'm thinking about it. I have not signed a deal yet to do it, but we'll see.
Can we hear an endorsement for that?
Yes.
I'd like to speak to you. Let me say a big thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to speak to your key lesson number 3 on adversity.
Yes.
You know, in my country, following the market crash in the stocks in 2008, I saw a number of companies go down.
Yeah.
So what's your country?
Nigeria, no, Nigeria. How big it was really bad. It lasted for quite a while. I lost about 30 million in the market. And I listened to you talk about standing in adversity. And I want to just ask you, when do you decide, or what signposts you look for to throw in the towel and move on? And what really can keep you standing, opening doors through difficult times? I mean, for entrepreneurship, the good side is exciting. But this standing, walking through adversity and keeping doors open, what can keep you standing through those periods? And when do you really honestly decide that, look, I'm done with this, I should move on to something else, you know? Because I think enduring, I mean, there should be some limit to when you can honestly endure. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very good question, and probably the most important question facing any entrepreneur. Companies go bankrupt when the owner or the funders decide to stop writing checks, right? Because if you continue to write checks to fund losses, you can go on forever. So it's when you stop writing checks that companies go bankrupt. And so the question is, when do you know it's the time to stop writing checks? One is obvious, right? There's no balance left, right? Unless you want to go to jail. The other, more seriously, the other is when the vision that you have for this enterprise, when you start to look at it very, under stressful eyes and say, you know what, it won't be, it can't be realized. There's a certain realism that you have to have and say, you know what, what's wrong with the vision? Is the vision right? Is that, does it still make sense? Okay, if that still makes sense, what have I been doing that has caused me not to realize that vision? And then you start to say, are there flaws there? Flaws that can be fixed. And I think those are the tough kinds of look in the mirror conversations you have to have. Can they be fixed? Do I have the breadth of knowledge, expertise, contacts, relationships to fix my strategies, fix my business model so that I can realize that vision? That to me is the most crucial sort of reflection that an entrepreneur has to do. And I've seen people who continue to write checks and the vision is not really clear, it's not really one that can be realized, but yet they keep writing checks. I've seen others who have a great vision, but they just don't have the relationships, the expertise, a business model that's going to enable them to realize it. So I wish there were an easy answer to that. The easier one is when there's no balance left. The other one is much, much more difficult. It requires an examination of the vision or my model, my business model, my value proposition, my relationships. Can that ever be tweaked to make that vision realized? So I hope that's as responsive as my experiences can convey. Yes, sir.
My name is Steven Opayemi. I run a business called Carlton International. Yeah. I'm Steven Opayemi. I run a business called Carlton International. I do not really have a question, but I just want to thank you. I want to thank you because all the 10 things, the key learnings kind of validate to a large extent some of the things I started doing since I started running this business, and it gives me a lot of hope that I'm doing the right things. So thank you very much, sir. And secondly, because the biggest challenge of an entrepreneur is to wake up from bed every morning and stay motivated to keep doing what you're doing.
Absolutely right.
And for me, the day I know, I have to do something else is the day I wake up and I don't look forward to going to work. The day I don't feel like I need to deal with that issue or I don't want to talk to that customer, then I know then there's a problem. I need to do something else. And secondly, my background, one of the best things that happened to me in my work life was to work for Procter & Gamble. I worked for Procter & Gamble for 8 years. And when you started talking about delighting the customer, the things I learned that you are taught from the one you work for Procter & Gamble, I started working for them in 1993, 1994, thereabout. Until now, I can still tell you the value statement of the company I left 15 years ago. And that shows how strong and how powerful it is to have a relationship with that kind of company. They tell you we produce products of superior quality and value that improves the lives of the world's consumers and delight our customers. And that sticks with you. And it's stuck with me for the past 24, 25 years. And it's part of what also helps me in the way I see my customers and the way I see the business. So thank you very much, sir.
You're welcome.
Personally, I'm going to make use of everything, that, you've shared this morning. And I hope that one day I'll be able to see you and tell you my business, I sold it for some billions of dollars. Thank you.
He is so correct as he talks about P&G, Procter & Gamble. So he's a P&G-er, as we call him. There's one lesson that the most recent CEO, A.G. Lafley, left a lot of us with, and he would interact with our largest suppliers. So I've sat in a room with him a few times, and he talked about the first and second moments of truth. And he knows what I'm talking about. P&G wants to win the first and second moment of truth. And he's able to use that simple phrase to communicate a very powerful concept to the hundreds of thousands of people around the world who work for Procter & Gamble. So everybody around the world who works for P&G, they understand winning at the first and second moment of truth. First moment of truth, tell me if I get it wrong, the first moment of truth is when she's walking down the aisle of a grocery store. And there are hundreds of brands to choose from. Lafley said, we want to win at that first moment of truth. We want her to choose our product over all the other alternatives. So that means that we have to have the right messaging, the right branding, right advertising, and we look at us and say the right package so that we win at that first moment of truth. They choose us over all the other brands. The second moment of truth is when she gets it home and she opens it and uses it for the first time. We want her to be delighted. We want to win that moment. So the package opens as it's supposed to. Product is not damaged. And it meets all of her expectations. All of her efficacy expectations about that product are all met. And that's the second moment of truth. And it's a powerful, simple statement, but hundreds of thousands of people around the world understood what he meant when he said it. So thank you again for your attention, for your questions. I really enjoyed it. And as promised, here's a copy of the article that was written.
My name is McCauley, and I do business as Lightsource Productions. I provide professional services in the area of strategic video communications. First, what we do is we help you craft your message using what I call the rule of the 5 W's: who, what, when, where, and why. We do event documentation, content acquisition, full-scale productions, editing, and of course distribution through our social media television network. And with social media, video is more important now than it has ever been. Whether you're talking big business, small business, nonprofit, church, or just an individual. Let's say you're planning an event, a wedding, whatever the case may be. But let's say a big event, but no video. And you spent all this time, all these hours to put this event on, and maybe 100, 200 people attend the event. But more important than that is that thousands could attend by watching it on social media. But of course, you don't think about this until after the event is over. You can't afford not to capture it for social media. And despite what people think, I am affordable. Give me a call. Let's plan your next video project and share it with the world on my social media television network. I promise you that you will have the attention of one person, me.